Hello, I'm Jennifer Johnson. This presentation is for Aspen University, submitted to Professor Dr. Eric O., doctoral program, Ethics and Professional Standards, and this is a review of ethics and professional behavior. We'll begin by taking a look at workplace behavior. What's normative theory? What are three theories that are part of normative ethics? How does professional development assist organizations in their ethical behavior and practices? How does ethics impact education and its behavior? And what are some implementation practices that can assist organizations in enhancing and improving their ethical practices and behavior? When we look at moral ethics, we need to take a look at normative theories that assist organizations and leadership in decision making, in identifying what's considered right or wrong, good or bad. Normative theories assist in moral reasoning, behavior, and conduct, all essential for an organization to experience success. The normative theories, deontology, consequentialism, virtue ethics. Deontology is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Consequentialism, what's the expected behavior as a result of the acts? What are the consequences? And virtue ethics, when we've observed behavior that's considered good or ethical, those behaviors should be practiced or emulated. So when we look at workplace behavior, what are some of the challenges? Well, bad behavior, not considered good, but considered bad. Naysayers who maybe don't believe or buy into that there needs to be ethical practices and behavior. Sometimes there's a lack of buy-in from the team, from management, maybe even leadership. And when there's a lack of team cohesion, that can impact workplace behavior in a not so positive way. Some of the challenges, when behavior is not good and it's more bad than good, it may be considered inconsequential. It may be inconsistent behavior in practice. It may be incoherent and incomprehensible. When behavior is not consistently good, these are some of the results that the workplace may experience. So what's required? Certainly leadership has to be in the mix. There has to be expected and anticipated behavior that's reviewed and observed. Leadership must take the role of guiding the organization. Behaviors that are ethical should be modeled, regularly assessed and rehearsed. They have to be essential in the workplace. A team focus is important. There should be stakeholder buy-in. If the organization is considering itself to be ethically stable, then the culture and the environment have to indicate those practices and those behaviors. They have to be communicated. They have to be displayed. They have to be rehearsed. So how does professional development assist? Well, it has to be ongoing. It can't be scattered. It should be scheduled. The education should bring information about behavior and expectations to the teams. That training requires rehearsal. It may be that rehearsal is a part of professional development, or it may be the rehearsal actually happens on the job, that organizations will ask their team members to observe their own behavior and record what they have rehearsed. Why is it important? It's beneficial. There's certainly return the investment when you consider ethical practices and behaviors that are considered moral. It minimizes confusion when everybody's on the same page, and the normative behavior is a best practice. What's important? There has to be a needs assessment. What does the organization need? Does management do that? Does leadership do that? Do the teams do that? It could be a combination, but there has to be a team focus. For consistency reasons, there has to be a focus from the team and from the individual as well. How does this happen? Experienced HR personnel can lead the charge. Team leads can be involved. Certainly there have to be department goals that may be part of the strategic plan. And stakeholder involvement is important. Stakeholders, associates, those that are supporting the organization should understand what the mission and vision is when it comes to ethical practices and behavior. So ask me metrics. How do we measure success? What does that metric look like? Peer feedback, critical. 360-degree organizationally, there has to be a consistent review from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top. Quarterly surveys are a good way to provide some data. That data could be in person, it could be email, it could in fact be anonymous, but certainly gathering data to assess progress is important. When we look at professional development, again, not just a team focus, but every individual on the team has to have buy-in. Can't be naysayers, can't be folks that sit back and watch. Everybody has to actively engage. Management has to have the focus, but that includes leadership and stakeholders as well. This is an organizational effort when we're looking at ethical practices and behavior. How does it look in education? Certainly there has to be a team plan. The organization has to be ready to take on a review of their ethical practices and behavior. Once that's done, it may remove some of the anxiety that may encompass this attitude of looking at one's behavior. A stakeholder view is important. Leadership must have a voice, and there has to be observed behavior. On stage, off stage, in the classroom, in the workplace, in the community, observed behavior has to be consistently practiced, rehearsed, reviewed. So how do we implement? Well, it's got to be leadership-led. How do we implement? Management's determining how is this implementation going to happen. Is it by the quarter? Is it by the semester? Is it by the year? Is it twice a year? How planned is it? An important behavior, which means it's got to be scheduled. What's a normative behavior? It's expected. Those normative practices are not just talked about in theory, they're action items. Bad behavior has to have consequences. So a part of this ethical behavioral implementation, when bad behavior is observed, there have to be consequences. Reviews annually, assessment quarterly, exemplary behavior. Normative and ethical practices that are exemplary must be celebrated and recognized. The goal is for the culture, the behavior of the organization to develop and enhance. When we look at behavioral implementation, it needs to be inclusive. That allows an equitable treatment of everyone and their practices and their behaviors. It has to be a growth mindset. You can no longer look at just a fixed mindset. What's expected is better and best. It's got to be a welcome environment for all. The organizational improvement, the goal is to develop and enhance our practices. Ethical behavior, normative theories should be a part of every organization's strategic plan. Leadership must take the role of guiding the organization. Individuals and team members, stakeholders, all must be actively engaged in not just theory, but in action in implementing ethical practices and behavior. These references will assist in validating this presentation.